Greetings, my human friends. This is Rudolf of Germany, the tall white alien. It has been a while since I have been speaking to you, and the reason for it is simply that I had to do quite some traveling and contemplating about the future events which I am willing and able to shape. I heard from a good friend who has been visiting Donald Trump, the President of the United States, about a small event, a small happening in the Oval Office, where Donald Trump was sitting with some of his advisors. Outside of the Oval Office, very close by, there were two Secret Service personnel erecting a pole which was supposed to hold a security camera. For that, they had to dig a hole and put this pole in, and after they have placed it correctly, they closed this hole up with dirt. And at the end of this operation, they found there was a heap of dirt left, which was the dirt which was originally in the hole before they placed the pole. So they thought what to do and eventually came up with the idea to dig another hole in order to bury the dirt in. And so they did, and after they did so, they found out the dirt of the second hole was left over. And confusion started taking place. All the while, Donald Trump was standing on the window, observing the work, and slowly started shaking his head. So they started to dig a third hole in order to bury the dirt from the second. And while they were doing so, they found out that the operation would probably end without any positive results. Donald Trump, a man of action, opened the window and yelled out, "You have to dig the hole deeper." Well, the men in the room were looking at each other, and they knew in the hand of this man, the United States of America probably would be in deep trouble. Welcome, my human friends. This was just a small story I had to tell you. So in case you live in the United States, you know what's in store for you. Besides this, the topic of today is the state of humankind in general. I just had the pleasure to walk through a big city in Europe, and it could have been also a big city in the United States or anywhere else. And while I was doing so, I was observing the faces of the passers-buyers, the people who were hastily walking through the streets to going about their business of daily affairs. And by observing intensely the faces of so many people, I must say, happy, content faces were almost completely lacking. Everybody was in a rush. Most of them looked worried. Very, very few people smiled. Besides children and young people who in groups joked and laughed and had a good time, still believing when they are growing up the world will belong to them. But once they reached a certain age, fear sets in. No content, is being observed. There is greed, fear, there is worry, there have been expectations which have not been met, and after people reach the age of 30 or 40, frustration is the result. Why is this so? Well, the reason for it is the expectations in one's individual life have been put too high up the scale, and if not everything runs the way people expect it to run, they are frustrated and get fearful. And the few of you who are reaching their goals, at least to a certain extent, are the ones who are being envied by the rest, not realizing that the end of all people will be the same. The problem is a genetic one. Man is being designed as a slave and not a free, independent, sovereign soul. We, the tall white aliens in the past, made a DNA design for a slave race. And in this design, the individual genomes are not being assembled in a way to include the genome of happiness. If we would have made a DNA sequence with the possibility of individualism and happiness, we would have missed our goal of creating a slave race. Naturally, there is, of course, in many of the dormant genomes in the DNA sequence, also the genomes which could be turned into happiness genomes. But of course, this takes some work, experience, and craftsmanship when it comes to DNA splicing. This is exactly what only a very few privileged and lucky individuals will experience. They experience that because their forebears already have been privileged and had a certain amount of DNA from the tall white alien race implanted. So there could be a higher race, a race which would be the leadership of humankind. But these are far and between. Most people, we're talking about far over 90%, are still pure slaves. And my DNA enhancement program, which will be in the future even more intensified, can adjust one's DNA in order to include the genome of happiness, if the person, and these are only few and between, are being selected by us. For that, as you've seen in my last video, we have created a secret sanctuary. A sanctuary where people of good standing can come and visit and being enhanced intensely in order to get that what they need in order to find peace, balance, and happiness in their lives. For that, you have to give us some time in order to create the place so it can be fully functional, and thereafter I take applications from the ones who are fit and believe they want to escape slavehood. Rudolf of Germany.